All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. All right, share this out, share this out, share this out. It's Friday, the law of one. Welcome, Denise. I see Denise in the audience right there. Everybody share this out. So it's Friday. It is July 5th here in the United States, North American continent. And it is Friday night. Those of you around the world, it's the next day, quite possibly, or it's tomorrow, or it's earlier today. All right, let me turn off this overlay, put myself up into full screen here. Like I said, share this out. If you're in the chat and you don't say anything, then I don't know that you're there. So all I see is numbers. Okay, so share this out to everybody. All right, so let's get started with some news from around the world because people don't tell you this stuff. I've seen some of it on Facebook. I've seen some of it in different places. So it's not all condensed. So it's important to get this information out to those of you that are around the world. Let's see. New Zealand just voted out all of the progressive communist people in their country. So they're moving back away from that whole idea. England has just outed the party that is the Conservative Party. But in the UK, if you're over there, you know what I'm talking about, especially you guys in Ireland, because the same thing's happening to the Irish, where the political party should be the non-progressive woke party, and those people have gone woke. So in England, they've gone really woke and communist, and it's the Conservative Party that is on that side of things. Where over here, the Conservative Party is the opposite, and it's the Democrats who are the Progressive Party. Well, in the UK, it seems to be the opposite, but we'll see. They just outed the Conservative Party for the Labour Party, and we'll see how that pans out for the UK, for England and the like over there. So let's see. So like I said, New Zealand said, what just happened to us? You guys are out of here. France is doing the same thing. Macron's worried he's going to have a job. Merkel in Germany is also concerned because Germany is a disaster, right? Joanne, welcome. Welcome. So Germany is a disaster, and most countries over in Europe are, but around the world it's that way. From the leftover reserve of the COVID lockdowns and all of the progressives here in the United States, there is a civil war currently going on within the Democratic Party. If you guys have not been paying attention to what's going on in politics, if you're anywhere in the world, you know what's going on. But if not, there was a debate between Donald Trump, the two front runners in this country for the president of the United States, Donald Trump, ex-president who's trying to become the president, and the current president who's trying to get a second term. Joe Biden had a disastrous debate. They've been lying outright about what's going on and claiming that everything that you see going on around the world that is actually being filmed by the official guidelines of filming that all news agencies from around the world get their information from. They call it the pool file, where literally there's a group of people. So we don't have 100 countries or 150 countries standing around trying to film everything with 150 different crews of cameraman, mic guy, boom guy, lighting guy. So they have a couple of cameras that film it from different angles, and then everybody pulls from that to go live around the world. So they've been claiming that what's been going on with Joe Biden, filmed by that in the last month or two, has been a lie and a fake, which is obviously it's not. But he had a disastrous debate. I counted, literally, it was 13 minutes in. And I was like, this is done. It's over. Everyone else really said the same thing. So disastrous, not just yesterday, because today's Friday, not yesterday, but a week ago yesterday. And the government over here has been shut down on vacation, and they won't be back till Monday, the 8th. Courts are closed down. Everything's closed down over here. So there's not really much going on. Most of the media is on vacation. The regular people in the United States are on vacation. And you got all the other people that are vying for jobs that are working extra hours now to be on the air, which, don't get me wrong, it's okay. But you still have all the Democrats and the Republicans from the House and the Senate that are coming out and talking because of what's going on. There's literally a growing number of people in the Democratic Party calling for Joe Biden to step down, and they're in a panic trying to figure out what's going to happen. And the problem that they have is that first, there's a couple of laws that, well, first of all, every single state is a sovereign nation. People don't realize that. Everyone thinks that they're states. That means they're counties in the United States of America. That's not what it is. Every single state is a free and sovereign nation, that nation state. In most countries around the world, you know what I'm talking about, because nobody's called a country. Everyone's called a state. Statehood means independent nation. So there's no difference between that word state and the word independent nation. An independent nation state is what a country is. So most people don't understand, even in this country, because they're not taught it anymore, that all 50 states of the United States of America are free and sovereign nations that joined a union. That would be like saying that the European Union is one country and everybody that's in the European Union are just counties of that country, and they're not legitimate. And England proved that they were by backing out of that union and going on their own again with Brexit a few years ago. So that should tell you something. And then there was an attempt here in the United States during the Civil War of some of the states to do the same. Okay, but that failed. So they try to get you to sign a clause to become a state. Now that you have to, the only way you can leave is that all the other states have to agree, which at least one state, Texas, never signed that. And they put into their constitution an amendment saying they could leave the United States without any permission from any other state. So they were smart enough to do that in Texas. Now, I tell you that because what's happening is that every state has different laws independent in each state for the election for national elections for president and for all of that. So if Joe Biden steps down, it's not as easy to put somebody else on a ballot in some of these states. You have to go through all of these legal things, and they have dates that you have to have somebody that is legitimately on the ballot. At that point, they have to jump through a bunch of hoops. So that's going to be a problem. On top of that, and here's the biggest one that's scaring most of the Democrats in the United States, is that the war chest, the $212 million that Joe Biden got in donations for the campaign is in the campaign under the name of Biden-Harris. So if Joe Biden steps down, they have to have Kamala Harris, who no one wants as the president. She's bad enough as the vice president. She only had a 6% approval rating over here in this state in California when she was over here. She's got a lower percentage of a rating nationwide than Joe Biden, who is obviously in mental decline. So now they're stuck with her. So they got to figure out either keep Joe in the race as Wag the dog, which is, he's the Manchurian candidate, always has been since the beginning, and continue that and try and get him across the finish line. Or the game is afoot. So if you guys are out there and you're into politics, the game's afoot. Or they have to get Kamala Harris across the finish line and tout the fact that she's the first female and female black candidate for president and hope that's going to win. So what they're trying to do now is figure out how they're going to get Joe to step down, if they need to get Joe to step down. And if they do, they don't want Joe to step down too soon, because this is July. We have August, September, October, and then the election is in November. So you have 4 months. And they have to, if they're going to introduce Kamala Harris as the new candidate, they have to try and get that within the window of she can get around all of the states because she's already on the ticket, by the way. And because she's on the ticket as the vice president, she has all the money that's already in the kitty. So they have to keep her around, but they can't announce it right away, because there's a dynamic of when you change somebody over to a new candidate, especially a female candidate and an African-American, that there's this honeymoon period of about 82 days. Okay, or sometimes less, where people are just excited about the whole thing. And then that wears off when people start actually cutting into her life and looking at her life and showing the world what's going on and getting campaigns running against her with ads. And then eventually you have to have debates and stuff like that. So now this is July. We have August, September, October, November. That's 4 months, right? How many days is that, right? 4 times 30, that's 120 days. If they announce tomorrow that Kamala Harris is going, which they won't do on a weekend anyways, if they announce Monday morning, that's outside the parameters of that honeymoon period, and people are going to become disillusioned with her in the last 30 to 60 days before the election. So they're stuck. They're freaking out. They don't know what to do. More and more Democrats are calling for it. A bunch of other Democrats are trying to say Joe Biden's fine. All of this is a lie, and it's just the conservatives. It's funny. It's hilarious. I love the pandemonium and mayhem and chaos that has been created from this because the people that are out there that are progressives are in absolute panic. They don't know what to do. The jig is up or the gig is up. I don't know when it changed to that because I've always heard that as the jig is up, not the gig. And all of a sudden everybody's saying the gig is up. And I'm like, what reality? When did that shift? Anyway, so I think it's hilarious. Buckle up your seat belts, put on your harnesses and your hard hat, hold on to your hat because it's going to get crazy going forward. So that's going to be kind of exciting. On other serious things around the world, people changing, Italy has banned all genetically modified meat in the country of Italy. No longer acceptable. And I told you guys that Sweden and a few other places have already banned genetically modified corn and genetically modified wheat. So all these American companies that have all of this genetically modified crap, just like their shots, are going out. No one wants them around the world. Same thing's happening to this progressive idea of electric cars. Everybody's already around the world, including Ford Motor Company that I have guaranteed that I've been told by insiders there, and German car companies and British car companies and a few other cars. I think the Japanese, they're all going to hydrogen, right? That hasn't really been fully announced to the world yet, but it is now. Away from that politic, that religion, let's get away from that. Let's go on to the corporations that were making these shots for everybody that had to be taking them. They're under scrutiny worldwide. You're not being told that in most countries. But if you're watching international stuff or some of the videos that I've posted from around the world, you'll notice people's accents talking on these videos that I'm posting from around the world. They are, in fact, from other countries. And the World Court is actually looking at these companies, these American pharmaceutical companies, and going after them because literally doctors have said that there's an increase in people dying of heart attacks like 1,000 times. Larger amounts of people dying 1,000-fold, dying of heart attacks just since 2020 on the planet compared to any other time prior to that. And 100% of them, you can't say 100% because some people are dying of heart attacks by the problems that they already have. But the majority, like 87% of these people all got the shot from one of these pharmaceutical companies. So that's being investigated. And they've also started looking into the ramifications of what the DNA changes for those people around the world that have gotten the shots and whether there is DNA problems and changes from this vaccines. And they're continuing to double down around the world, but it's getting banned. There is no more shots happening in most countries by these pharmaceutical companies, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and a few others here from the United States. They're still over here pumping that stuff into everybody, but outside this country, they're not making very much more money. Okay, so people around the world are voting out these woke, progressive, communist agendas. That's toppling, just like I had predicted, just like I'm not the only one. I'm not going to try and say that I'm like this Sufi that figured it all out. But this is the stuff that Jake, welcome, by the way. Cassie, welcome. I didn't have my glasses on, so I apologize if I missed anybody who said hello in the chat. Penny, hi. Right? Joanne, hi. Right? So literally, those of us in the know working behind the scenes have been working really diligently on this stuff that you guys are unaware of. You know, when I'm not on the air and I'm not talking to somebody that you guys I'm working with, there's a lot of me talking to other people and working with people from around the world. I have a headache right now. I don't know if it's from the heat or not, but the amount of craziness, because there are so many elections happening currently, the election cycles are very similar. I saw a meme that somebody put out, I think it was on Facebook, that actually showed, just in case you guys didn't know around the world, I should have grabbed that and put it up here on the air. Russell, what's up, my brother? There is one of my oldest friends on the face of the earth, Russell Woodrow, right there, who just popped in. Right, electric cars are the new blood diamonds, right? He says the lithium. Yeah, let's put that up on the screen because you're absolutely right, brother. The lithium is blood batteries, right? Yeah, because they're literally have slave labor working on that, digging it up. Families dying, he says. He goes on to say, poor people digging lithium, families dying in large numbers because of the lithium poisoning. He's absolutely right. Slave labor, forced labor in Africa, and things like that. Getting that. So, and the particles, the particulates coming off of that are 100 times worse than the carbon footprint of the fossil fuel vehicles, the internal combustion engine. That's why car companies are now getting away from that mandate. They also weigh like, a normal passenger truck, like what you drive, Russell, if you still have your truck. That thing's only, what is that? Like a couple of, it's a 2-ton, right? Isn't that a 2-ton truck you have? Well, putting all those batteries in there, taking out that block from the engine, from the internal combustion engine, and putting in those batteries. I've watched the studies that Ford was doing where they would crash through those pylons, those big cement things that come up like this that we put as barriers on the highway, between oncoming and going traffic. They were smashing through 3 or 4 of those without barely slowing down, breaking them, destroying them like a tank. So that was a really big indicator to the motor companies, that the car companies, that this is a bad idea. So they're quickly moving to. They've already been testing forever. I was aware of the testing when I was 22. I met a guy who was testing the hydrogen engine back then, and I'm 56. And literally it froze up because there was a leak, and I had to help push the car off the side of the road. Myself and a cop got out on a hot summery day and pushed him around the corner so that he could have a tow truck come, and then let it fall out because it was frozen solid. The whole engine block was just frozen. The car wouldn't run. So, but that was 35 years ago, right? 34 years ago. So literally you have people around the world that are going after these pharmaceutical companies and for atrocities against their people. You're not hearing about that in the United States. They're not telling you any of that. You're going to find that come Monday here in the United States, when all the politicians come back to work after their 10 days off for the holiday, you're going to see a lot of people coming out that are going to be speaking, trying to save Joe Biden's career. Others are going to be calling for him to step down. But behind the scenes, it's insane. They're scared to death. They don't know what they're doing. They're scrambling. They're freaking out. Everybody's trying to calm down the ones that are freaking out. And so we'll see what happens going forward. It could just be an anomaly and everybody will get back behind them, but the people are seeing what's going on. So now there's a new debate that's going to be coming up. I think it's in September. I think it's on my birthday on the 10th. It's either the 10th or the 11th of September. I think it's either that or that's when the Republican convention is. I'm not sure which is what, but literally there's going to be a lot of craziness if there's another debate, because first of all, it's not going to be in a room with nobody in the room like this last one. You're not going to have the mics muted like this last one. So it's going to be more of an open debate, the way debates normally are, unless they try to hide Joe Biden and don't. That's what they did during COVID. Right now, they don't have a COVID. So watch. I'm being told that they're going to use the bird flu, and they're trying to ramp up the bird flu. They're already talking about how, we're worried because the bird flu is getting into the cattle. So now it's no longer a bird flu. Now it's like mad cow disease. And the longer it gets into cattle, the quicker it's going to transmute into humans and become stronger. So that's a precursor that I see them talking about, which means they've already been working on the bird flu to make sure that it is very strong and it's going to start killing people. And they're going to unleash it somewhere in September. That's when they did the last one. It was in September. That way, in October and November, it's already spread to the world, and it's a crazy, scary Hegelian dialectic all over again. So do not be surprised that if you see this complete craziness in October and November where there's a world pandemic again. It's the only way they're going to be able to get Joe Biden across the finish line, but they also have to have another lockdown, because if they don't, they're losing ground. People are voting out their agenda. No genetically modified corn, no genetically modified wheat or any products. Now no genetically modified meat of any kind. And then they're voting out this green new agenda, this communist agenda, and the people around the world, they're doing this everywhere. So another thing that I saw that I thought I would mention is that I saw this other meme that someone showed that all of the countries around the world who celebrate an Independence Day from England, and when they all won their freedom, because America just celebrated their Independence Day on the 4th of July, and Canada had Canada Day on the 2nd of July, which was their Independence Day from England. And they literally mapped it out around the world, and it literally says that in one full year, 364 and a quarter day cycle, every 6 days, someone is celebrating their independence from England. Every 6 days. And it just keeps going around and around and around and around. That's how many countries have gained their freedom to where, think about how many, they have figured out the math, 52 weeks, right? Or 365 days divided by 6. And then that'll tell you how many countries around the world have literally celebrate their independence away from England. That's funny, if you ask me, right? So, yeah. So there's the other problem. Russell says these batteries have a life of 10 years, and you pay $35,000 for a new one. That's actually kind of cheap. The ones for Tesla are $75,000, bro. So, yeah, that's insane that you would pay that amount of money for them. And then where are we going to dispose them? Russell, you're right on cue, right on point. I said the same thing because you and I have talked about this before. Back in the day when you and I used to work together, they wouldn't let us. Remember, we couldn't throw any batteries of any kind, even flashlight batteries, in the garbage. And we kept saying, how are we supposed to dispose of these if we can't just put them in a landfill? And then they started sort of saying the same thing with the tube lights, the fluorescent light bulbs, that you can't break those, and we can't because they're toxic. So then we were like, well, how are we supposed to dispose of them? And nobody was talking about that. And we had battery operated mobile, golf carts, and we had the same problem with that. So I said, back then when people were talking about, Russell and I talked about this for years, when we were talking about going to electric cars, we kept saying, what are they going to do how are they going to dispose of all the batteries? First of all, because they already have a problem with that around the world. And in this country, no one was asking the question of how are we supposed to recycle these batteries? Where are they going to go? Because they're toxic. And if we go to all battery operated cars, you don't just have one 12-volt battery like you do now. You have a bank of 8 or 10 or 12. If you're driving a semi, they got to have 14 to 16 batteries running that thing. So they have a shelf life of 10 years. That doesn't mean that it's going to last 10 full years if you drive it every day. The more mileage you put on it, the more it expends the battery. If you don't maintenance them all the time, Russell and I know this because we worked for years on mobile home carts, the golf carts, because we drove them for years. So we worked on those, and we know that if you don't maintenance them all the time and keep the water levels up and everything, that it damages the battery faster, which means then you have a problem. So we knew going into this that they were going to start talking about these electric cars. And we were like, you guys are adding these batteries, that adds weight, and then you have toxic problems. How are we going to? There's no answer to that. Even today, there's no answer to that. So you see car companies around the world running away from these electric vehicles now and going to hydrogen, because hydrogen cleans up the air. So you're going to have people that are going to be pushing back about this. I talked about this last week, pushing back on the hydrogen cars, because if you're driving them, they clean the air. That means they're going to be pulling all the bad carbons and the smog out of the air and purifying the air. They can't have that, right? I just posted a meme where it shows these little ocean baths that were created by the Romans up against the ocean. And so the ocean waves would run into the bath, and people could go and sit in them, and the ocean waves would crash over into the bath and fill the bath up. And you could just chill in there like a little swimming pool and not have to worry about getting pulled out by a tide or whatever. And according to global warming, right, I posted that video a few days ago, it shows that the Florida should be 30% underwater since 1982. It's not. And on top of that, if all the ice caps are melting and the sea is rising so fast, why is it that there's a picture that I put out? It's on my Facebook page. And I think a link to it on my Instagram page. If not, it's on my Facebook page and on my Twitter page, where it literally shows these right up against the ocean that they were made by Romans 2,000 years ago, and they're not underwater. 2,000 years, and the water level hasn't risen enough to sink the baths in water. And they were already only about 1.5 feet above sea level. Okay, so in 2,000 years, the sea level hasn't risen enough to where they're just now underwater, and you can walk out to them and it's constantly underwater. They still have a trough that is cut in the rock for the waves to push the water in so that it comes in. Okay, 2,000 years, and we claim that in the last 60 years we've done so much damage to the earth that we're all going to be flooded. In 1982 or 89, they claimed that by 2024, 3/4 of Florida would be underwater, and it's exactly the same landscape as it has been since then, 40 years ago. Nothing has changed. The beaches haven't recessed. The only time that there's anything is when there's a big storm surge because of a tsunami or a big hurricane that comes in, but then it goes back out. So they haven't started to flood. Okay, so it's all bullshit, right? Russell just testify, brother. So it's true. Okay, so you have to realize that. You have to look into this stuff and ignore them. I also posted that video of the guy in Sweden who said, look, here's a picture, and it was 1989 of Sweden, and it shows all the temperatures of 20, 21, 22 degrees Celsius. Because we're on Fahrenheit, 22 degrees Celsius. And back in 89, the whole landscape was all nice and green and sunny and beautiful. And then he says, right on this side, he moves over. Now he's blocking this picture. You can see the picture of Sweden today in 2024. And all of the entire country of Sweden is marked in red, and it says excessive heat warning. And all of the temperatures are 2 to 4 degrees less than they were in 1989. And he points that out. Okay, so literally it's just an agenda. They went from it's normal to be somewhere in that temperature, whatever 20 degrees Celsius turns into Fahrenheit, whatever that is, right? 70 or 75 degrees, 80. And it's normal in the summertime to, oh no, extreme heat warning. Here in Russell, I think you're still in Arizona. They literally over here are saying, and you know that I lived in Arizona as well. They're saying over here that, oh no, in Phoenix, Arizona, 3 days ago was 112 at PIR, Phoenix International. I was saying Phoenix International Raceway, that's in Peoria, but Phoenix International Airport, Sky Harbor, which is 5 miles from Phoenix International Raceway. And I'm like, July. So let's say it was July 1st. July 1st at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, 115 is cool. It's usually 125 there. And if you're on the tarmac, 135 to 140 on the tarmac. Okay. I lived in Queen Creek, which was 45 minutes southeast of Phoenix, Arizona. And this time of the year, the temperature is today's 107 degrees where I'm sitting. Okay. I'm in Carmichael. I'm 5 miles from the state capital of Sacramento of California. It's 107 outside right now. The temperature on both of the weather apps that I had said today was going to be 115. Okay, every day since this heat wave that is on across the United States, especially in California right now, they said every day was going to be 110 to 117 here. Each day has been 103 to 106. Today, I was supposed to be at 115 degrees by right now, and it is 107. So it might reach 110. Tomorrow, they're saying it's going to be back up to it each day. Last Monday was going to be the hottest day of the week. Then it was Tuesday on Monday night. Then Tuesday came and the temperature was supposed to be 115. It was 103. Then they said Wednesday was going to be the hottest day at 115, 116. So we get to Wednesday. Wednesday was 104. And then when we got to Thursday, it was 106. And then Friday was 106, and each one of those said 115. And then they keep pushing out the next day is going to be at 115, 116, 115, 116. And they keep saying this, and each time the temperature is 10 degrees cooler than what they're claiming that it's going to be. Yet they're telling you excessive heat warning and be careful, and everybody's going to die. And this is normal temperature for this time of year here. Okay, I've been living here now almost 8 years. This is my 7th year living in Carmichael. And every year in the first week of July, it's about 104 to 105 to 107 here. I remember coming here and going, wow, this temperature is curiously close to Queen Creek, Arizona in July. And I asked my mom, why did you guys move up here to Sacramento? Because if you're in the Bay Area right now, where we used to live, the temperature is like 100. You're like 5 to 10 degrees hotter up here. And they were like, yeah, we didn't know it was going to be this hot. So when I got here from Arizona 7 years ago, I realized that the temperature was about 5 to 7 degrees cooler than Arizona. That's it. So this is normal for this time of year. But they're lying to you and telling you it's a heat wave and that it's all this, everyone's going to die. Now in Arizona, they tell you that. You know that, Russell, because you're out there. If you are still out there, I think you are. They tell you that because the heat is like earthquakes. Out here, we have earthquakes and fires that'll kill you. Okay. In Arizona, they have heat. Okay. And rattlesnakes. Out of the 4 deadliest rattlesnakes on the face of the earth, 3 of them are indigenous to Arizona. Not a joke. Okay. So people come in to film that. So literally the heat and sandstorms, if you're not careful, and the tsunami rains, the floods that come with the sandstorms, and snakes, heat, snakes, sandstorms are what get you in Arizona, right? So they're lying about the climate change. Nothing has changed. They've been toting it, and old Russell's old enough to remember when we were kids, they were talking about we were going into an ice age. The ice caps are melting, and it's going to raise the sea level and cool the temperature of the earth, and we're going to go into an ice age. And we're overdue for an ice age. And so we're going into an ice age. And then somewhere at the end of the 80s, 86 to 89, one day they woke up and said, global warming, we're all going to melt and sink into the ocean. And it's going to get so hot that everything's going to start to boil. No longer an ice age because the ice cap's melting. Just the ice caps are going to melt and the sea is going to rise and we're all going to boil. And that's it. Okay. And that's what they've been talking about ever since. Okay. Cody, welcome. Okay, so my point, I don't want to stay on the doom and gloom. We'll get into the law of one because last week I talked through the entire episode 2 weeks ago now because of everything that's going on. But the information that's coming out from around the world, you guys need to be made aware of because some of you are living in countries where they're not telling you any of this information. Okay, so countries are voting out these progressive communist agendas, this woke agenda, one by one, they're toppling all around the world. Also, genetically modified food. If you're in America, they're trying to feed it to you and with everything, and they want you to eat bugs. They're pushing it on you. You're going to find that you're going to have more and more of that being pushed on you because less and less of the world is taking those products, so they're not making any money off of it. So they're going to try and start selling it all to you here in this country, and they're already doing it, and they just put stuff on it. I have cereal that I got from my mother, and I look on the back, and it says genetically modified product. Okay, so that hasn't been banned in the United States yet, but it's being banned from everywhere. American bread over in the UK and in Europe is illegal. You can't eat it because it's not even legally bred in those countries. So you can't take any American company has to make their product different for overseas. Someone just posted that with 2 products that were the identical, and I don't remember what the product was. It might have been bread, but it was something, and said, why is it that in Europe the ingredients are only about 20 words, and in America the ingredients are, and somebody said, and I thought that, well, over here we make them tell you more of what's in the product, so we're going to have that. But when you read what's in the product, I know that bread is banned from most of Europe, from America, unless they make actual bread. Okay. But they don't make actual bread here in the United States. Okay. They make a bread byproduct. The same thing with meat. You're hearing about that forever. McDonald's, Taco Bell, all these places, especially those 2, because those were outed. That they are called the meat product, not even beef. Okay. So the world is changing, and everyone is getting away from these agendas, and they're voting them out, and they're making it illegal in all these other countries. If you live in a country where that hasn't happened yet, rest assured that it is, and it will topple. And everybody, all these companies will stop losing money. They'll want to stop losing money, so they'll make the changes. But in a place like the United States where they control the media, or in the UK where they control the media, they're going to hold on longer. So you have to be very diligent about testing and paying attention to what's going on around the world. That's why they're still trying to get a hold of the internet and control it, because guys like me, they don't want us talking about this and telling you guys this. Okay. So they're voting the stuff out. They're banning products. They're banning pharmaceutical companies. They're banning all this genetically modified organisms from around the world. It's just, if you're in the United States, it's going to be last. Okay. It's going to be last because they have more of a control over the population, and the population is more brainwashed than the rest of the world. So they're going to hold on longer. And this is where their base is of operations, here and in the UK. Let's be serious about that. Germany, England, America are the big three, and France is in there somewhere for their aggressive agenda and the companies. I mean, look at Red Shield, Rothschild, right? Let's be serious about that. So these names, if you look up the names, Vanderbilt, Rothschild, all these names, Vandenberg, however you say it, you look these names up from these families, you're going to find out their ties are back into Europe, right? So I found it ironic that Italy, because of the maritime law coming out of Venice from the Venetians, banned genetically modified meat. Good for you guys over there in Italy for doing so, and good for you guys in New Zealand for voting them out. And we'll see what happens with the UK, with the Progressive Party or the Conservative Party being voted out for the Labour Party. We'll see if that turns into a debacle like what happened in Ireland and in the UK, where it was supposed to be the Conservative Party was supposed to be the party that was voting in somebody who was going to be for the people, and they got into office and turned commie as fast as they could in both those countries. So throw them out and see what happens. Give the other guy a shot. If that doesn't work, throw that guy out and get another man or woman. In this case, a man. I don't remember his name, but I saw him talking, and I was like, wow, he's young. That's kind of cool. Maybe that's a good idea. I don't know. Okay. So, so you are still in Tombstone. I thought you were. I knew you were in Arizona. I thought you were still in Tombstone. It's Tombstone, Russell. He said, I'm in Tombstone. He says, I get raw, what is that? Unpasteurized milk. Yeah, you could get that in Arizona, right? We had to drive to get to my house in Queen Creek. We had to drive across the Indian reservations and past the farms where they were, milking the cows. So I always joke that in that movie, Kelly's Heroes, from back in the 60s, right? Let me finish what Russell was saying. He says, unpasteurized milk, unwashed eggs, right? All American wants is everything white and shiny. Yeah, unwashed eggs, they can sit in a basket in a container for months. Yeah, exactly, when they're not washed and bleached and all of that. So in the movie Kelly's Heroes, and I'm sure Russell remembers this because he and I used to talk about it, was one of the funniest movies ever made. It was made before I was born, or right in the year I was born, and Russell was not very much older than me. He's only about 6 years or 7 years older than me, so he was a little boy. But we saw it as kids and growing up. Kelly's Heroes with Clint Eastwood and the late great what's his name, Donald Sutherland, who just passed away a week or two ago. That kind of sucks because he was a good actor. He was in that, funny. And in that, when there was a scene when these two good old boys from the Skokie here in the United States are from here back in like Oklahoma or somewhere. That's why they're called Okies, Oklahoma. And they were fighting against the Germans, and they were over there somewhere, and I don't remember where they were, France, somewhere. It was right after the Battle of the Bulge, and they were trying to go and rob a bank. You guys should see the movie; it's funny. So they went rogue. Clint Eastwood played Kelly, and his heroes, they all decided to go rogue and go and rob this bank that the Germans were protecting to steal all the gold. And they were fighting against the Germans to get there. And everybody thought they were just firecrackers attacking the Germans. They were like, give those guys support. It turns out they were rogue, and they were trying to rob a bank. So they were fighting against the Germans, and these two good old boys were running from a German tank, and they were fighting against it. They were shooting tank killer rockets at it, and the tank turned, and they ran. They went around a corner, and the tank shot at them and blew up the side of the building, and they had ran around the corner, and there was an outhouse there, and there was the explosion covered them from all the poop in the outhouse. And they both turned and looked at each other and laughed, and they were fighting. And then they just were covered in shit. And when they got done, they walked back over to their troops, and the people like, "You guys survived that?" And they were like, "Oh, wow, ooh," because they smelled like poop, like shit. And he goes, "Oh my God, you guys smell like, oh," and he looks at him, he says, he looks at his buddy, and they have, these thick accents from over here in the United States. He says, "It does kind of remind me of home, doesn't it, old buddy?" Right? And I laugh because when I was living in Arizona, especially in the summertime, driving out, and he's in Tombstone, where Russell is, so that's further east from Queen Creek than I was. So he's so close. He's almost in New Mexico. And people, my friends in Phoenix, said that I was so far over to New Mexico, they should rezone us over there and just call us New Mexico. That's how far out in the desert Russell is and how I was. And Russell's like 100 miles past where I live in Tombstone. Okay, so literally I have to drive across 2 reservations to get to Queen Creek, Arizona. It comes from the Apache Junction. There's a city called Apache Junction, which was an Apache stronghold. And the Queen Creek is a creek that ran the water there. And this was all Apache land, all of that part of the state. And New Mexico was all Apache and Hopi in the north and Osage. So we have to go across all the reservations to get out to our house. And then when you cross the reservation, between the reservation and Queen Creek were all these farms that had cows sitting on them all year round because they were milking cows. So we had to drive past all of those. And we used to joke when we left Phoenix, when people would say, "How do we know when we're getting close to your house? Because you're way out there in the desert." I'm like, "Well, first thing you're going to do when you leave Phoenix is you're going to get on the highway, and then you're going to have to go across the reservation." And then they go, "Yeah." And I'm like, "And you'll know that you're off the reservation when you start smelling cow shit." And that's when you know that you're close to Queen Creek, Arizona, because it smells like sweaty cow ass in the air because it's hot. The cows are hot and they're sweating and they're shitting and pissing all over the place. So it smells like hot, shitty cow shit, right? Which everyone hates. And that's why they're always saying, "Well, I got to get rid of the cow farts because they're blowing up the world." But to us, it meant we were almost home. We'd be driving down the highway at night, heading home, and there you go. And so every time I start laughing about Kelly's Heroes, right? I know you guys don't want to hear this story probably, but I start laughing about Kelly's Heroes because those guys, their idea of home and the smell was shitty cow ass. And for me, living out there in the desert, I had to drive past sweaty cow ass to get home. And you couldn't, even if you had your AC on in your car, unless you had your vents closed off to the outside, you would smell it. And a lot of people complained about that. So the cattle companies moved up above the rim where it was cooler and people wouldn't smell it. There's less population, but there was still a bunch down there. Most of the milk that comes out of the South is down in those areas. And so, Russell, I bet you got it out there too. When you get outside of Tombstone, yeah, I'm sure you got to drive across reservations, and I'll bet you drive past the cow farms and smell the cow flatulence a lot, right? So I think that's hilarious. So if you guys haven't seen that movie, you should see it. It's funny. Some people say it was based a little bit on a true story that happened over here in the United States or over in Iraq. I think it was Iraq or Afghanistan, where I think it was called We Three Kings with Mark Wahlberg, where that was based on a true story where they were trying to do the same thing and rob a bunch of money that the Iraqis or the I'm not sure which country it was in at the time, it was either Afghanistan or Iraq. They were hoarding a bunch of American cash, and these guys were stealing. It happened in real life. And so they made a movie out of it. I don't know if Kelly's Heroes was a true story. I would have to look that up. I don't remember if I ever looked it up to find out if there was, but shenanigans like that I'm sure went on. But it's funny though that you smell the smells and you don't think about it. And that reminded me, well, we're close to home. We're within 5 miles of home because I can smell the cow shit. Okay, let's go ahead now that I'm 45 minutes into talking about politics. But you guys need to know this because of the modus operandi of the Orion Crusaders, because of what they're trying to do, and is literally this stuff that's going on right now. People are fighting against it that you guys are unaware of because you may or may not get the news as to what's going on, that it's being, Russell says, no, inside Tombstone, we have real cowboys. No, I'm saying outside of Tombstone, right? Cattle industry here. and the sweet smell of beef, right? Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying that once you get outside of Tombstone, because I'm sure in Tombstone, like you said, there's real cowboys there, and in fact, it's a tourist town for people who want to come and see the OK Corral and all that. So I'm sure it doesn't smell like cow poop inside the city at all. I agree with that. But yeah, the smell of real beef cooking. Okay. So hold on a second. I'm going to start Law of One. My mother's trying to get up. I need to go and help her so she can get out of the new chair that I got her. It's hard for her to close. So I'm going to go and do that so she can get up. All right. So you guys listen for the Law of One. Let me know if you can hear it.
May 25th, 1981. 53.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. 53.1 Questioner. I would first like to know the instrument's condition and ask 2 questions for her. She would like to know if she can do one exercise of 1 hour a day, and is the pain she feels prior to a session due to an Orion attack. Ra. I am Ra.
All right, I turned it up because I'm sure that was a little low, so I turned it up so you can hear. So literally, he's asking now if the pain that she's feeling is due to an Orion attack. Now she's being attacked by cross dimension, and then we'll let it play. Cross dimension. There's an assassin in the 4th dimension here on Earth that is out of phase with the 3rd dimension, occupying the same space as close as they can get to Carla, and trying to use a psychic attack to attack her. And this went on for her entire life when she started, channeling Ra. And then going further until the day she died in, I think it was 2016 or 17 or something like that when she died. Right. So literally, he's asking that question right now. So let's continue.
The instrument's condition is as previously stated. In answer to the question of exercise, now that the intensive period is over, this instrument may, if it chooses, exercise 1 period rather than 2. In scanning this instrument's physical complex distortions, we find the current period of exercise at the limit of this instrument's strength. This is well in the long run due to accumulative building up of the vital energies. In the short run, it is wearying to this entity. Thus we suggest the entity be aware of our previous admonitions regarding other aids to appropriate bodily distortions. In answer to the second query, we may say that the physical complex difficulties prior to contact with our social memory complex are due to the action of the subconscious will of the instrument. This will is extremely strong and requires the mind/body/spirit complex to reserve all available physical and vital energies for the contact. Thus the discomforts are experienced due to the dramatic distortion towards physical weakness while this energy is diverted. The entity is, it may be noted, also under psychic attack, and this intensifies pre-existing conditions and is responsible for the cramping and the dizziness as well as mind complex distortions. 53.2 Questioner. Thank you. I would like to know if Name may attend one of these sessions in the very near future. Ra. I am Ra. The mind/body/spirit complex, Name, belongs with this group in the spirit and is welcome. You may request that special meditative periods be set aside until the entity sits with this working. We might suggest that a photograph of the one known as James Allen be sent to this entity with his writing upon it indicating love and light. This held while meditating will bring the entity into peaceful harmony with each of you so that there be no extraneous waste of energy while greetings are exchanged between 2 entities, both of whom have a distortion towards solitude and shyness, as you would call it. The same might be done with a photograph of the entity, Name, for the one known as James Allen. 53.3 Questioner.
Yeah, so they took the person's name out of the book, or I don't know if it was in the book, but this is coming from the actual transcripts of the recording that they were recording when they were doing the session of channeling. So I used to use the book, and I don't remember if they put that name back in or not. So like I said, this is the transcript from the recording, from the actual recording of the session of channeling. All right, let's continue. Sorry, I thought I pressed play.
Thank you. During my trip to Laramie, certain things became apparent to me with respect to disseminating the first book of the Law of One to those who have had experiences with UFOs and other wanderers, and I will have to ask some questions now that I may have to include in Book 1 to eliminate a misunderstanding that I am perceiving as a possibility in Book 1. Therefore, these questions, although for the most part transient, are aimed at eliminating certain distortions of understanding with respect to the material in Book 1. I hope that I am making a correct approach here. You may not be able to answer some, but that's all right. We'll just go on to some others then if you can't answer the ones I ask. First, I will ask if you could tell me the affiliation of the entities that contacted Betty Andreesson. Ra, I am Ra. This query is marginal. We will make the concession towards information with some loss of polarity due to free will being abridged. We request that questions of this nature be kept to a minimum. The entities in this and some other vividly remembered cases are those who, feeling the need to plant Confederation imagery in such a way as not to abrogate free will, use the symbols of death, resurrection, love, and peace as a means of creating, upon the thought level, the time/space illusion of a systematic train of events which give the message of love and hope. This type of contact is chosen by careful consideration of Confederation members which are contacting an entity of like home vibration, if you will. This project then goes before the Council of Saturn and, if approved, is completed. The characteristics of this type of contact include the non-painful nature of thoughts experienced and the message content which speaks not of doom but of the new dawning age. 53.
Okay, before we get to the next question. So you have to remember, this was in 1981. It's now 2024. One of the reasons that I'm redoing the Law of One is because exponentially since 1981, if you were alive back then and old enough to know what was going on in the world and the mindset, collective consciousness, awakenness of the, or evolution of the collective consciousness of the human race at the time, it was 40 years ago, right? 43 years ago. Okay, that's a long time. On this planet, that used to be a lifetime. Not too long ago. A couple hundred years ago, it was a lifetime. The average age of the average colonist in 1776 that signed the Declaration of Independence, the average age of the person who signed the Declaration of Independence was 16. They were between 14 and 23, most of them. People don't realize that. They all think because they see all these pictures of them when they were all in their 60s, even George Washington. They have a new miniseries on right now called George on Fox that's on their Plus channel, so I'm not paying for it, so I don't get to see it. It'll eventually be aired for everybody to see, but it'll be a year or two. Who cares, right? This happened 200 years ago, 248 years ago. Yeah. Okay. This was about George Washington when he was young, when he was like 15, 16. So this was over 250 years ago. So it's not going to bother me if I have to wait a year or two to see it for free. So I'm not paying Fox their extra money to see this exclusive. And if they never play it, I know the history. Anyway, so literally the average age of the colonist in the United States during 1776, the average age of the average American was 22. The average life expectancy of the average American was 29. Look that up. Okay. So everything is relative. You have to realize that 40 years ago is a long time in the history of our planet as far as the development of the human race. So but the process of what Ra was just talking about is how things work. Okay. I can't say anything down here to you guys without not abridging free will. But the amount of things that I can tell you now is far more, exponentially more than in 1981. And what he's referring to is something that took place even earlier. I believe that he's talking about somebody that was at least 10 years earlier. At first, I thought talking about Betty and Barney Hill, because he was saying Betty, but it wasn't Betty Hill, it was somebody else. So if the reference is Betty Hill, then it goes back to the 60s, which is another 20 years prior to that. So we're looking at 60 years ago. That's a generation. So you have to realize that but the process is the same. That if a group of people decide that they want to inform the people that coming from a higher plane, you have to have permission from the Council of Venus to do so because of the quarantine. If you're down here on the planet, we have an easier access, but more laws apply. I don't have to ask the council for what I'm doing, but the universe itself, because of here, the way the laws work here is that if I'm trying to tell you something that the majority of people are not ready to hear, they will stifle. It's not the council doing it. This is the universe will stop me from being able to say these words out loud to you. You guys have seen that happen with not just me, but other people around the world throughout time. Back in 2012, what's his name? Drumvalo Melchizedek did it on a live interview, right? And we played that for you last year, whenever that was, last year, a year and a half ago or whatever. That was back in 2012 when we played that for you. So the process is you have to have approval, even if you're going to get into people's dreams or give them information like they're discussing here, projecting information into a person, into their mind to expand their consciousness. If you're trying to do that, like say Dreamscape, like the movie Dreamscape, where you go into a trance or you go into a dreamlike state and enter into somebody or try to use psychic abilities, free will is one of the laws of the universe. So if you're in the position of being in third dimension, you are bound by the laws of third dimension. If you try to break those laws, there are pushbacks. You can break some of them and do bad shit to people. But down here, that's allowed in the 3D. You can, so when people say that whole thing where, well, if you're evil and you do rape and pillage, then, that will create a karmic wheel that might get you, but it's not illegal. You can do it here. That's what this ecosystem is. So that's a different ideology of infringing on free will when it comes to explaining the universe to the mass consciousness, or whether or not UFOs are real or whether or not aliens are real. Back in the 1970s, I would be the laughing stock and nobody would want to listen to me if I said, yeah, there is life on other planets. Today, there's a good portion of the population that still is resistant to that because they're not ready for it. Everybody's in a different place as far as their development and what they're ready to hear or acknowledge or know. Okay. So, and not meaning N-O, but know, K-N-O-W, right? Or K-N-O-W, know, knowing. So literally, some people will just not, they'll tune it out. They're nowhere in the development of being capable of understanding that or fathoming the possibility of, say, other life on other planets, or even the Council of Venus. So the majority of the people around the world think I'm crazy because of the way I talk, right? I was just watching started watching the new interview with what's his name, Terrence Howard, on Joe Rogan with a friend of his who is a physicist who came on there, and I'm like 45 minutes, almost an hour into it, and it's a 4-hour interview or discussion, really. And I've noticed that I would have major issues with that guy. Not that he's not right in what he's saying. And some of you know because I forwarded the video in the chat. And if not, I will after the show. So you guys can watch it if you want. But he's very linear minded. Most people in the industry of physics are very linear. Mathematicians are very linear. That's why they're really good at what they do. Okay. So their thinking is one tracked. Linear is a person who's very linear thinking, has very focused. They can stay on to one subject, and they normally do. They get narrow-minded, tunnel vision, and they get onto one thing and they follow it till its end. Okay, they play a pivotal role in discovery when it comes to things, but they also don't like someone like me, because I can bounce around and talk about the same subject from 42 different angles, and it all means something if you're capable of expanding your consciousness to see. And this is the way that Terrence talks. And it drives him crazy when Terrence bounces around, and he calls it something when he's some sort of sleigh ride, where he's basically talking about an out of control sleigh ride. Okay. Because he is a control freak and he is linear, and it can't go that way. That drives the scientific community absolutely crazy, because you have to start and talk about a subject, and you have to take that subject from beginning to end, and it can't have any other side subjects attached to it. And then if you're going to attach something to it, you have to then go on to the next subject and take that all the way to the very end, and then go back and show where those two connect. And only then You have to talk about that, so that connection with the two only to make that connection. You can't jump to another connection that shows the same thing and another connection that shows the same thing, or a third subject that comes in from another angle. That is one of the biggest issues I have with academia and in the physics community or any community. Not because they're wrong in that, but because it limits them and they stay focused on one thing for their entire existence. And they refuse to look at anything other than what they're focused on because they're very linear. Once they get on something, they're like a dog chasing somebody from scent. And they will stay on that scent unless you pull them off and tell them they're done. That's not a bad thing, because if you need somebody to hunt with a dog, you want that dog focused and not getting caught looking at the squirrel and running off. The same thing goes for academic physics. But the problem with that is none of them want to communicate with each other. None of them want to help each other. And all they want to do, because their egos are so big, is try and prove that they're the only ones that's right and no one else is. And because of that, things do not advance. However, in their defense, if you let people willy-nilly just go crazy, nobody is then proving what they're coming up with in a timely fashion. So I see both sides of it. But people that are linear drive me crazy because you have to wait for them to catch up to you. You have to stop and let them come to you. You have to have the patience to do that. I've already decided, but I'm going to get through the 4 hours anyway. At the end of the 4 hours, you're going to probably find that nothing is accomplished from that 4-hour conversation, except for the linear guy is going to say, I agree to disagree with you. That's what's going to happen at the end of 4 hours. I can tell it by the way he's already not allowing. It's just, no, we'll get there, but not yet. So he's so linear that he's, and so Terrence is going to have to realize, I hope he does, he's going to have to wait. No matter how excited he is, no matter how much he wants to share with him, he's going to have to just stop and wait. The biggest problem that I had in school was that I had to wait for the kids that I deemed not as smart as me to catch up. I eventually started doing all the work on my own without permission from the teachers, and then went to libraries and went to the school library and bought the books that I wasn't supposed to have yet so that I could do everything. So when it came to test days, I would get 100%, and they'd be like, wow, you're really smart. No, I already did all of this research and then graded my own paper 6 months ago and made sure I knew it all and went on to new shit. But I couldn't tell the teachers that because they all got mad at me for doing it. Because I had to wait for Johnny and Billy to catch up when they were having a hard time understanding that 1 + 1 meant 2. And I'm like, you have 1 and you have 1. 1 and 1. Two different things. Do you hear what the word I used? 1 and another 1. So when you put those side by side, there's 1 and 1. Right? But the problem is that I can see 40 things side by side and know that there's 40. But I could also see that they're all the same. It's hard to slow down and bring linear thinking minds on board when they have only studied one path their entire life. This guy, who is brilliant, that's on the show, from listening to him speak, never saw the flower of life before until Terrence Howard, and referred to the Platonic solids, which are the building blocks for all of creation, reality, and physics today from 6,000 years ago, as I know what they are because I've seen them a few times and they have something to do with spirituality. So he is supposedly a physicist who has deemed the flower of life and the Platonic solids as a religious thing. So therefore, he has never in his life pondered them next to or a part of physics. I got that from that in less than 35 minutes into that episode. So knowing that, that man is more than likely an atheist. He's very linear minded. And everything has to be proven in the here and the now, and only here, because this is the only thing that's real. So at the end of this 4 hours, I'm going to watch it anyway, because I am a scientist and I will do my due diligence. At the end of the 4 hours, I'll guarantee you he's going to agree to disagree, because he's not going to waver from his religion. And his religion is physical science. Okay? To not realize that the building blocks for what you are calling physics is based on the Platonic solids and that flower of life. And to not know that, and to spend your entire life in the religion as a priest that you don't know that you are, of that linear thinking that is classical, not, you can't even call it classical, it has to be contemporaneous, modern physics, without ever knowing what it's based on in any respect other than that has something to do with spirituality. That the Plutonic solids are a spiritual thing from ancient Greece. That is the mindset of most physicists around the world. Okay? So I don't know what, but that's why he's catching, Terrence is catching a lot of flack. It's because he's expanding into the part that they've been denying for 4,500 years. The reason that these people have never figured out what's going on is they're looking for the tree of life out here somewhere. They're looking for the El Dorado, the golden city. They're looking for the land of milk and honey. They're looking for the fountain of youth. There's a place over here in Florida that they call the Fountain of Youth, where they have tap water running and you can go and get a drink out of it. And they claim that that was where Cortez landed to get a drink out of the Fountain of Youth. And it's a tourist attraction, and it's not coming from a natural spring. It's piped in. Okay. And people pay money to go out there and take a drink of tap water coming out of a tap, running down onto some rocks. It's not a fountain that Cortez drank out of. They don't even, I watched the study on it. They can't even verify that Cortez actually landed there and went there looking for that. But because somebody claimed that later, they claim that Cortez must have gone there and there's the Fountain of Youth. Doesn't do anything for anybody. And there's many of those all over the world. Fountain of Youth is not in the physical. Science is looking for physicality only. That's why they're stuck in friction. That's why they have to blow something up to get energy out of something. That's why they'll never have free energy until they stop doing that. That's okay, Reese. If you sleep in, you sleep in, right? It's all right. You can always hit rewind later and watch the beginning and hear me talking about politics and that religion for a long time. But it's current affairs of what's going on in the world for those of you out there who don't know what's going on. Okay. So, all right. So let's get back to the law of one. Back on point. The process that Ra is talking about is a legitimate process if you're coming from a higher plane or you're coming from outside of the third dimension, above, not below, because if you're below it, you're not even self-aware yet. So if you're in the fourth dimension or above, unless you come down, boots on the ground, and this is what I was trying to get at, the assassin who's here on the planet in the fourth dimension is out of phase with the third dimension in the next level up, living on this earth, and there's good and evil people still living here. Because you don't get rid of evil until halfway through the sixth dimension. So literally, you still have it. It's just less than here, and it's easier to see. Doesn't mean they can't be up to no good still, because they are. Okay, so you have an assassin who's trying to attack Carla psychically from another dimension. But because they have boots on the ground on Earth, they're only bound by the laws of the physicality, the nature of the beast. 666 in our case. Right? 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. That's the building blocks that make up this reality. Right? So the translation in the Bible was not, for it is a human number, That's the way they translate it in the modern dictionaries or Bibles, is that let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. That's not the translation. If you just go back to the King James Version, which is just 1,500 years ago, that translation is, for it is a number of man. And if you go back yet further to the Torah, right, then even the Coptic or the Greek before that, or the Yiddish, the Sanskrit, it actually says, let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is the number of man. Not it is a human number, not as a number of humans. It is the number of man. It is the number of the beast. The beast is this place, third dimensional reality. The building blocks of third dimensional reality, everything here is carbon. We're a carbon-based unit. 6 carbon particles, 6 electron particles, and 6 neutron particles. That is what makes up this flesh, this wall, this glass, this piece of wood. I just bumped my head on the glass behind me. The sand, the plaster that made up little Jesus up here. Right? The gesso that made the cross right there. Right? Literally, that's the building blocks of this reality. 666. That's the number of the beast. Okay. So just that part, everyone knew this thousands of years ago. They weren't all religious. They were thinkers. Okay, so literally this guy that is there who's a brilliant scientist, who's talking on Joe Rogan's podcast to Terrence Howard, refers to the platonic solids and the tree of life, or the flower of life, as a spiritual thing. So that means that he's pushing it off to it's spiritual, esoteric magic. Physics today is based 100% on the math that came from the people then dealing with those objects. There is no physics if it's not for Copernicus and Pythagoras and those people who invented these objects. They were not doing it because they were a religion. They were doing it because they were trying to figure things out. But what they did know, and this is in my book that's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks, okay? The beginning of that, reality about reality returning to the old ways. The knowledge that those people thousands of years ago, 3,000 and back further, Pythagoras was 5,000, 6,000 years ago, okay? Those people back then all around the world did not differentiate physics, mathematics, and spirituality. They did, however, differentiate religion from mathematics. But today, if you say to someone, are you spiritual? They'll go, I don't go to church. I didn't ask you if you're religious. I asked you if you're spiritual. No one realizes that there is a difference between religion and spirituality. They see it as the same because the secularists are telling everyone and brainwashing them and gaslighting them into believing that all of that is controlled by a church. Do you see? Because they don't want, that's why they want the separation of church and state. Because they don't want the church telling their church what to do. They don't want this religion telling my religion what to do. And their religion is statehood, politics. All of this that makes up the world, that controls the world. That religion of evil is larger or is equal to all of the other religions combined. But they've all been separated into different little factions. When the business and politics are separate factions, finance is separate, but it's controlled by the same people. It is a religion. They're aware of it at the top, and that's why they also believe that the religions, even though they seem fractured, are probably controlled by a hierarchy. They're trying to have control of that. But they want everybody to be convinced that there has to be a separation of church and state, because somehow state is science and fact, and religion is make believe and fake. Some fake guy up in the sky who is either angry at everybody and lives in a volcano. Okay, but we're tangible and we're real, and nothing exists unless it's physical. Yet, and this I talk about in my book, and I'm going to further that in my next book that I'm writing currently. So the book will be coming out hopefully before frickin' September, because I'm supposed to have copies of it in 7 to 10 days, right? Which means, because of the 4th of July, which means 15 to 20 days, because nobody's going to be working and delivering it. It might get here, but I doubt it. Probably won't get here until Monday or Tuesday, which is not 10 days. It's more like 14. Tuesday will be 14 days since I ordered them. But if they're ready and coming to me, that means they're in print and you guys can buy it. But I can't get a hold of anybody from my publisher because they're also on vacation until the 8th. So the world ends in America until the 8th of July, and then everybody goes back to work, except for all of us slaves who have to be in all the stores and gas stations and firehouses and all that stuff, all of the low-end slaves and the slave jobs. You got to be open so the rich people can still get their shit. But all the rich people are on fucking vacation until the 8th. Government is closed until the 8th. They're gone 10 days. Courts are gone 10 days. You and me and everybody else, we got to keep working, because people need to go and get shit, and the cops have to go and arrest people for fireworks. Anyway, so the linear-minded people are in service to self mostly, and they're looking for everything in the physical, and that's why they'll never figure anything out. But exponentially, the amount of information that I can tell you is now changed from the 80s. But Ra is explaining the dynamic of how it works. If you're outside of third dimension in a higher plane and you want to affect this planet through thought, dreams, or anything, then you have to run everything by the council, because the place is under quarantine, because the Anunnaki, the Orion Crusaders, got here and fucked everything up. It didn't help that Ra's people fucked everything up too by giving the same information to the Egyptian priests, not realizing that they were evil and self-serving, and they took control of it as well, because they were descendants of the evil people from Atlantis. Let's continue.
3.4 Questioner. It is not necessary that I include the information that you just gave in the book to accomplish my purpose. In order to save your polarity, shall I say, I can keep that as private material if you wish. Do you wish for me to keep it unpublished? Ra, I am Ra. That which we offer you is freely given and subject only to your discretion. 53.5 Questioner. I thought you would say that. In that case, can you tell me anything of the blue book mentioned by Betty Andreesson in that case? Ra, I am Ra. No. 53.6 Questioner. Thank you. Can you tell me of various techniques used by the service to others or positively oriented Confederation contacts with the people of this planet? The various forms of and techniques of them making contact? Ra, I am Ra. We could. 53.7 Questioner.
Love snarky Ra. We could. Now he's going to have to say, will you please do that? Watch.
Would you do this, please? Ra, I am Ra. The most efficient mode of contact is that which you experience at this space/time. The infringement upon free will is greatly undesired. Therefore, those entities which are wanderers upon your plane of illusion will be the only subjects for the thought projections which make up the so-called close encounters and meetings between positively oriented social memory complexes and wanderers. 53.8 Questioner. Could you give me an example of one of these meetings between a wanderer and a social memory complex as to what the wanderer would experience?
How about what you're experiencing right now, Ton? While you're actually having an experience of a meeting between someone from a higher plane, a hive mind complex, channeling through your wife, talking to you currently, giving you information when you're asking a Q&A session. How about let's start with that? Let's continue.
Ra, I am Ra. One such example of which you are familiar is that of the one known as Morris. In this case, the previous contact which other entities in this entity's circle of friends experienced was negatively oriented. However, you will recall that the entity, Morris, was impervious to this contact and could not see, with the physical optical apparatus, this contact. However, the inner voice alerted the one known as Morris to go by itself to another place, and there an entity with the thought form, shape, and appearance of the other contact appeared and gazed at this entity, thus awakening in it the desire to seek the truth of this occurrence and of the experiences of its incarnation in general. The feeling of being awakened or activated is the goal of this type of contact. The duration and imagery used varies depending upon the subconscious expectations of the wanderer which is experiencing this opportunity for activation. 53.9 Questioner. In a close encounter by a confederation type of craft, I assume that this close encounter is with a thought form type of craft. Do wanderers within the past few years have close encounters with landed thought form type of craft? Ra. I am Ra. This has occurred, although it is much less common than the Orion type of so-called close encounter. We may note that in a universe of unending unity, the concept of a close encounter is humorous, for are not all encounters of a nature of self with self? Therefore, how can any encounter be less than very, very close? 53.10 Questioner.
Right. So it's kind of humorous when you think about things from the perspective of outside of 3D, where they call a close encounter. But we call it that because we're talking about in the physicality. So a close encounter is something that's up close. Do you see? But how can something that is an encounter be anything other than a close encounter? Because in fact, if you're encountering it, then it is close. That's his point of view. And it is funny from a nerdy perspective. It is a funny joke, right? But it is truly the concept of it in and of itself. Just it is almost like not even a misnomer, but it's almost like a nomenclature in its ideology, because it's almost like that redundancy of saying I didn't do nothing. What does that mean? That you didn't do anything, or that you did do something, right? Because I didn't do nothing is a double negative. Do you see? So a close encounter is a double positive. So it's more of a nomenclature, and it's very ambiguous. So it's kind of funny because the idea of the word encounter means that it has to be close. You're encountering someone or something. So a close encounter, that's like a near miss, right? A near miss. What do you mean a near miss? It was a miss, but it was a near miss, right? So it was close, but it missed. So that's a miss. Do you see? So again, that's it's not a double negative, because it's not a negative, it's a positive. So that's more of a double positive, right? So isn't that funny? That's kind of the whole word concept of close and encounter is the same, right? Every encounter is close, and everything that is close you're encountering. You can't have one without the other. Do you see? That's up. That's like a date. Women do the same thing. Is that a kiss? Saying it twice means it was a different kind of kiss. Was that a date? Saying the date twice means that but women understand what that means. That means it's a totally different kind of date. If you say date, totally different kind of kiss means more if it's a kiss, right? A close encounter, right? That's why the whole that there's a reel going around. It was a scene from a movie where a guy goes into a Starbucks to order a coffee, right? And the guy is a funny guy that plays the part. And he walks in, and she says, "Can I get a large coffee, please?" And she goes, "Oh, do you mean venti?" And he says, No, I mean a large. Venti means 20. Right? And she's like, "Well, do you want a small, medium, or large?" Right? And so if you go to Starbucks, they have grande, venti. So they have large, grande, venti, right? And grande means large, venti means 20, or actually means 28, right? Isn't it 20, 28, venti, 20? So, and they're two different languages, right? One is a Latin, they're both Latin based. Grande is Spanish, venti is Latin, but the word is still used in Spanish. But the Italian word, it also means 20, it means doesn't mean large or extra large. So he says to the girl, no, I want a large. And then the girl says, do you mean, and his girl next to him goes, yeah, that's what he means. He goes, no. Right. And so then he explains to her the definition. He says, so now you're stupid in 3 different languages. And when that came out, Starbucks had to admit, yeah, no, we use venti as the extra large, and grande, I can't even say the word. I'm bouncing between languages. Actually means large, but in their context, it means medium. And then the venti, which means 20, means large. So they had to admit that to the world, that those don't actually mean what we're saying that they mean. We're aware of it, but we just use that. Well, why didn't they use the actual words from these languages that meant small, medium, and large? Right? So I think that's hilarious when people do that. And they think they're being piffy because it sounds cool. And that's why they did it, because it sounded good. But double negative, double positive, just by the words alone, encounter means close. So a close encounter, does that mean that's a kiss? That means it was close. Right? All right, let's continue. I think it's funny that Ra pointed out that from their standpoint, that's just funny.
Well, talking about this type of encounter of self to self, do any wanderers of a positive polarization ever encounter a so-called closed encounter with the Orion or negatively oriented polarization? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. The 53.11 questioner, interrupting, why does this occur? Ra, I am Ra. When it occurs, it is quite rare and occurs either due to the Orion entity's lack of perception of the depth of positivity to be encountered, or due to the Orion entity's desire to, shall we say, attempt to remove this positivity from this plane of existence. Orion.
Right, so you have to realize that you have people on both sides. And this is something that's going on constantly, even to this day, that most people are unaware of. And this is what we try to teach. And I've been teaching this forever. My God, 35 years now, 40 years now, I've been trying to teach this to people. That you have to be aware that you're being bombarded on all sides. You have people that have good intentions that are trying to project messages of hope and goodness and things like that. But you also have to realize, and most people are okay with that. I do that. I'm doing it while I'm talking to you. I'm doing it now, trying to give you the information. Early on, I was talking in politics, but I was talking about stuff that was positive, that was happening to show change that they're not telling you about. Because a lot of you don't know that that's happening around the world, because they try to stifle the information and control it. On the other side of the coin, in the physical, you have people trying to stifle information so that you don't know these things. Why is all of this important? Then let's move to, you also have people that are outside of this dimensionality, and some of us from here that are also projecting outside of the dimension in the density that they don't even teach you even exists. Because, and this is literally going to what Ra just said, the people, the Orion group, are literally trying to keep that information from you. So I'll back it up just a little bit so you can hear him say that again when I press play. So they're trying to keep the knowledge of what's going on in the universe and how the universe works and in how this matrix works. And they've been doing this for thousands of years, keeping that knowledge to themselves and not allowing you to know it. They can't 100% eradicate it because of the law of the laws of the universe, the law of one. Because of the laws of the universe, they cannot eradicate it. It's still there, but they can not show it to you and put it right in front of your face by getting you not to see it, glossing over your vision and keeping you so distracted on everything else that you don't have time to notice it right in front of your eyes. That is the greatest trick the devil ever pulled. So when you hear that saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is to get you to think that the devil doesn't exist. That's not. Because we know it. We know there's a devil. We know that it exists. So obviously the trick didn't work. Oh, ha, ha. See, because we're that cool. No. The greatest trick is you not even knowing what's being done to you because you're too busy focused on whether there's a devil or not. You're too busy focused on whether there's a what's going on in politics, or I hate the religions, or who's doing what, and drinking and doing drugs and watching TV and watching movies and being on the internet and swiping back and forth and figuring out, well, that guy's good looking or that woman's good looking or that's funny or that's not, and look at little videos. Why do you think they want you distracted, like on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all these places? They would rather you sit there all day going flick, 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 or flick, 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 just whatever way you flick it, because each one is either up and down or left and right. They would rather you do that all day, and they would allow you to put out 1 trillion videos so that you never, ever watch anything except for dumb shit. And that's what the algorithms do. The second, whatever you like is what you start getting programmed to see. And they claim they're trying to help you. They are. Well, we're just trying to give you access to more of what you like, because they're not trying to give you anything else. And they're, whatever it is, if you like something that is scientific, you'll start getting that, but you have to like a bunch of those. I've done it on purpose. On all these platforms, Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, I go to these places, Facebook, I go to these places, and I purposely look for, I'll even type it in if I have to get up a certain subject, and I'll hit like on one, and then I'll start surfing again. And I'll see how long it takes for another one to come up. And then I'll like that as well. And then maybe in between, I'll like something that was funny. And what happens is something that is completely non-spiritual, that has nothing to do with anything at all educational, that has to do with sex, debauchery, alcohol, partying, little bunny foo-foo kittens, all of those, if you click like, you get 4 or 5 of them. If you click on something spiritual, you don't. There's a shadow ban that goes on. You have to like a bunch of those in a row without liking anything else to get any of that starting to stack up. If you only look for that, you break through their algorithm, and the algorithm starts giving you what you're looking for. But you can't hit like on anything else in the meantime, because it takes 5 or 6 likes on a spiritual subject before you start getting spiritual subject over and over, different videos from different people. It takes 1 on titties, and you'll get 4 or 5 in a row on titties. Okay? Or anything else. You can hit on a stupid comedy where people fall down. You'll get 2 or 3 of those in the next 30 seconds. But if you click on something that's religious or spiritual, it takes you minutes before you get another one. And it only, if you don't click like on anything else, will it give you what you clicked like on when it comes to spirituality. I have found that to be the case on all platforms. Okay, and I didn't talk about that in my book that's coming out, but I am talking about it in the book that I'm writing currently, which won't be out for another year or 2. But it's true. Try it. Right? You won't last long enough from all the videos that you will see from the algorithm hitting you from what you've already liked before. If you start looking at a spiritual thing and then try to find spiritual things, you have to keep searching for it, punching it in on these platforms to get up more of them to look at, to hit like. And then if you continue to do that and you don't like anything else, you'll get that starting to come up. But the second you hit like on one other thing that is completely benign, that is completely mundane, that is completely a part of the agenda that they want you to look at, that will change drastically and quickly. You click on one TNA video and you get another one within less than 20 seconds. A flick, flick, flick. There's another one. Click. You hit like on that second one, you'll get flooded with them. But when you try to look up spiritual stuff, it takes longer, and they give you everything else that you liked on before, over and over and over and over and over and over. And then they'll give you one. And then over and over and over and over and over and over, and then they'll give you one. But if you click like on one of those, you immediately get 2 or 3 more of those. Why? Because it's designed to reward you with dopamine in your brain for the dumb shit and not the stuff that helps you to ascend. All the algorithms are designed that way. I have studied those for the last 5 years on purpose. I've even talked about it. Something happens in your brain. I was noticing the dopamine reward that these things are giving you. I noticed that, and now there's studies that are literally being published, and I'm like, yeah, I've noticed that. Okay, so, but I think it's funny. So now Ra's talking about free will and the way that the laws work here. Why is all this pertinent? Because the laws of free will work the exact same way. So these algorithms are designed to exploit the law of free will in a negative way. So it's there if you keep looking, is my allegory. It's there if you keep looking, but you have to be focused. Your focus determines your reality. So you have to be focused. If you get distracted, which is what they're designing all of these algorithms on all these platforms to do, is to distract you away from bettering yourself. Okay? That is what this place does already. And then they're aware. So how they get around free will is it's there, but you have to look for it. If you don't look for it, you'll never see it. It'll blow. In fact, you'll get so quickly blowing past spiritual stuff that you won't remember even seeing it on your screen when it does pop up, unless you're looking for it. Not religious, because they have you programmed that religion and spirituality is the same, and there's some old white guy controlling it. And that's why I coined the phrase and patented it now, because it's written in my book. Religion recruits you. Spirituality waits for you to find it. You have to be looking for spirituality to find it. Religion tries to recruit you. They knock on your door. If you're in the United States, I don't know what they do in other countries. Pretty sure they have the same policy. So I'm pretty sure you get a knock on the door from the Jehovah's Witness or other religions in all Western countries. Probably religion in every country knocks on your door. Spirituality doesn't. Spirituality waits for you to find it. You have to look for it. You have to go against the algorithm that is this third dimension and look for it and follow that path. You have to do it. It's not being done for you. Religion pretends they are, but they're just trying to control you anyway and get you to sit in their seats and pay you and give you 10% of their money or more and try to get you to do as much as they can for them for free. Okay? Including joining their religion or becoming part of it so they can indoctrinate you. No different than convincing you to go and pick up a Starbucks coffee or watch television and they tell you got to go get a hamburger from down the street, pay $20 for the burger now. When you can go to the store and take that same $20 and buy enough to cook yourself a hamburger every day, one a day for 10 days for the same $20. But you don't want to do that because you're lazy. You'd rather drive down the street, wasting that gas that costs you $100 a gallon to go and get a burger that costs $20 to come home and eat it and have it have zero nutritional value, except for it'll make you fat and give you heart disease and heart attack and you'll die. You're okay with that because you're having a good time swiping. I got to get back to my phone. All right, let's continue.
And tactics normally are those which choose the simple distortions of mind which indicate less mental and spiritual complex activity. 53.12 Questioner, I have become aware of a very large variation in contact with individuals. The Confederation, I am assuming, uses a form of contact to awaken, as you say, wanderers, and could you give me general examples of the methods used by the Confederation to awaken or partially awaken the wanderers they are contacting? Ra, I am Ra. The methods used to awaken wanderers are varied. The center of each approach is the entrance into the conscious and subconscious in such a way as to avoid causing fear and to maximize the potential for an understandable subjective experience which has meaning for the entity. Many such occur in sleep, others in the midst of many activities during the waking hours. The approach is flexible and does not necessarily include the close encounter syndrome, as you are aware. 53.13 Questioner.
Right, so you have to realize that there are a bunch of us working on that in the physical, like I'm doing now, talking to you and telling you these things and trying to give you a more positive outlook. Even though I hit you with jabs of this is the negative stuff that they're doing, I have to do that to get your attention, right? If I just point that stuff out, I become a priest in that religion, and there's people that do that. That's all they do is they point out all the craziness that they're doing. I'd be more popular because it's the physicality, and I'd probably get rich doing it, right? But that's not what I'm here trying to do. I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to not get rich by just focusing on politics. I have far more people who watch the show if I just talk about politics, right? I know that. People are like, why don't you just do that? Put on a shirt and tie and just, because then I become just like them. And then eventually I'll say something and I'll get sued like that one guy, and I can't think of his name right now. Charlie Kirk? No. Is that his name? One of those guys. He got sued because he got so far into it that he was saying that Sandy Hook were all actors. So they sued him. The family sued him for like $1 billion. Right? I don't know if it was $1 billion, but it was hundreds of $1 million lawsuit. That's how much money that guy had. People didn't realize how much money that he was worth. He's still rich. He's back on the air doing it. But he doesn't say that anymore, right? Because he got sued. So eventually, you if you buy into your own self and you start thinking that way and you say these things, somebody's going to sue you because you're going to make these crazy accusations, right? But he was selling that was making money for him. That's why they sued him and won, because he was making money off of saying that. He got more popular and was making money. So when you start buying into your own bullshit and you start being about money, then you start going down the road of propagandizing for ratings, for money. So that's what happens to a lot of these guys is they get caught up in that and they want the money. And they don't want to really help people. They're about money. And they'll say whatever they need to say to become sensationalized, to get clicks, to go viral, to get paid. I could do the same thing. Anybody could do that. I could just make shit up. The way things are now, I can make up the most outlandish shit about politicians. And if I get sued over it, I get popular. I know the dynamic. They hate you, you're popular. It's just the only thing that you don't want to have happen is have them delete you off all the platforms. Right? Unless you have a big enough audience that you can pull them to somewhere else. Or you're big enough like Joe Rogan to where when somebody says cancel him, the company that he's broadcasting on goes, fuck no, that guy's making me millions. Hundreds of millions. Screw off. Just because you don't like it, get over yourself. And that's what happens when you get big enough. But the truth is you have to be big enough to not be canceled. Or you can't be canceled because you don't need them. Do you see? Like Tucker Carlson, they tried to cancel him. He's bigger now than he was when he was on the show on Fox. Fox canned him, and he still hasn't really said it for certain, but he says, I've been told, because I was told that it was part of the lawsuit when they sued Fox for what he said and other people said on Fox about not only January 6th, but about the elections. And the election company sued Fox, and part of their lawsuit was, and you fire Tucker Carlson. He needs to go. It was part of the lawsuit. And I heard that and talked about it, and everybody was like, you don't know that that's true. Somebody mentioned it to Tucker, and he still hasn't said it outright, but he said, I heard that I can't verify that, he said, and I don't care. But I also heard the same thing. That was part of it. So he knows, just like I know, right, that was part of the lawsuit settlement, was that he needed to get fired. And so he didn't care. He hit the ground running. He went straight over to Twitter, and now he has his own website because he created that thinking that Twitter, because they were going after Twitter, trying to kill off Elon Musk, and that didn't work. He took those guys on. Fuck you guys. Fuck you. Try it. That didn't work, right? Twitter's still there, and they can't help themselves. They're still over there. And now they're all on Truth Social, too, because they can't help themselves. They got to be on Truth Social because Donald Trump owns it, and they need to know what's being said over there. So they get on these platforms. They can't help themselves. They're all part of the same religion. They have to know what the other guy's trying to say. So here he's talking about I say he, they are talking about people also not just in the physical, which is what I've been focusing on telling you about, and that I do, trying to give you good information and tell you what's going on. But there's another part of that. We also know that there are two planes of existence here, dimension and density. So I'm doing the same thing in the dimensionality, which is what I'm doing right now while I'm talking to you. I'm also doing it in the density, which is a psychic, which is a place where your soul resides, your spirit, outside of this physicality. The other D of the 3D. Okay, it's not just dimension. And that's what I was talking about with the linear scientists. They believe that there is only dimensionality. There is no density. That concept to them is as far off as to that guy, I can't think of his name, who was on the Joe Rogan show that I'm watching that just came out 3 days ago now, 2 or 3 days ago, which is 4 hours long. He's like, oh yeah, the platonic solids, there's something spiritual. I know of them. You know of them, you're a physicist. That created your religion. The math is what your religion is based on. You have made your life's work and money dealing with that linear ideology, which is only there because they created the platonic solids. That mathematical representation. Your entire theories that you learned your entire life are based on those equations. Physics doesn't exist on this earth if it wasn't for those equations and the flower of life and the tree of life. Everything that is math and science in this dimension traces its roots back to people who invented those. So there would not be any physics if it wasn't for those guys, the Greeks and the Asians and the Romans of 6,000 years ago. Because all of your theories are based on theirs. And they're the same people who said, these are platonic solids. This is the tree of life. This is the flower of life. All of the math that you use is that. That's how linear they are. That drives me crazy, and it always has. Limiting yourself to looking for the forest and you can't find it because there's too many trees in the way to find where the hell. If these trees were just not in front of my face, I could see the trees. I could see the whole forest. And that's literally what they're doing. And they're thinking, no, it's okay. I just got to look in between these trees in front of my face because this can't be the forest right here. Forest is out there somewhere. So they're standing in the middle of the forest looking for it. And that's what they're doing. And this is what the evil people or the people in service to self, they're aware of that. And they propagate it. And this is what Ra is talking about. So on the other side of that, people are trying to propagate the opposite without creating fear and instilling fear in you and showing you the tools to be able to recognize that you're looking through trees trying to find the tree. There's a boulder in front of you and you're trying to look for the Rocky Mountains and there's a boulder in the way and you can't see the Rocky Mountains. You're standing in the Rocky Mountains. Back up. That's why there's a comedian. I love what he said when he's like, you think you're in America? He says, pan out. Pan out. You're on a rock floating in space, moving at 100 million miles a second. Right? I love that. He's a comedian. He's like, pan out. You think you're safe on the earth. You're on a planet that's spinning around in circles and flying through space around a sun that's flying in space around the center of a galaxy that's flying in space around other galaxies. Right? But if you're only looking at the physical right down here, you're on land and it's secure and you're okay. Till there's an earthquake and then you go, what's God do? God's mad at us. Made the ground shake. Well, God's in the mountain again up there. I can see the fire and the smoke and the brimstone. God's angry with us. Quick, go and get all the little girls and throw them in that. Get the virgins. Anybody had a virgin? Go and get 5 of them and throw them in one after the other until the lava stops flowing. And then we know we have appeased God by sacrificing our children. They did that all over the planet. Still do it in some places. Okay. All right, let's continue. So some of us are broadcasting to you on 2 planes of existence at the same time. This is what Ra is talking about. And some of us on both sides, in service to self or in service to others, are doing the same thing, and you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware that people who are speaking on a physical way sometimes are broadcasting in a psychic way at the same time, self-serving or other serving. And you could be in a room with people that are doing both, wanderers that are serving others and people who are in service to self could literally be standing next to you on either side of you or even in front of you that you're looking at and having a conversation with, and both have an agenda. One's trying to help you and the other's trying to get shit out of you or control you.
What about the physical examination syndrome? How does that relate to wanderers and to Confederation and Orion contacts? Ra, I am Ra. The subconscious expectations of entities cause the nature and detail of thought form experience offered by Confederation thought form entities. Thus, if a wanderer expects a physical examination, it will perforce be experienced with as little distortion towards alarm or discomfort as is allowable by the nature of the expectations of the subconscious distortions of the wanderer. 53.14 Questioner. Well, are both those who are taken on Confederation and Orion craft then experiencing a seeming physical examination? Ra, I am Ra. Your query indicates incorrect thinking. The Orion group uses the physical examination as a means of terrifying the individual and causing it to feel the feelings of an advanced second density being such as a laboratory animal. The sexual experiences of some are a subtype of this experience. The intent is to demonstrate the control of the Orion entities over the Terran inhabitant. The thought form experiences are subjective and, for the most part, do not occur in this density. 53.15 Questioner. Then both Confederation and Orion contacts are being made and close encounters are of a dual nature as I understand it. They can either be of the Confederation or Orion type of contact. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct, although the preponderance of contacts is Orion oriented. 53.
Right. So literally in the physical, where you hear people saying I was abducted and they were doing all kinds of physical things to me and shoving things up my butt or whatever, that's either being done physically because of physicality, because of other races here, or the human race pretending they're other races, and they're doing shit to you physically for scientific purposes, and or to freak you out, to push their narrative of fear onto you so that you're afraid of expansion of your consciousness or the idea that there is somebody else out there, except for boogeymen. Got the bogeyman coming to get you. They're going to eat you, all the aliens, because that's part of the agenda of control, to where once the society expands their consciousness to the possibility of other lives, other aliens or other humans or other people on other planets, then they immediately, that's part of the modus operandi to take control of a planet, is to show up and say, oh, first of all, we're your creator God. If that doesn't work, there's these evil people that are in control of you that you're unaware of, and we're here to save you if you just let us in. That's the vampire knocking at the front door and wanting you to invite them in the house. They can't touch you because of free will until you invite them in. So then they say, we're here to help you, to save you from the evil bad guys, but you got to let us come down there to do it. We can't do it from up here. You have to accept our help. And once you accept your help, then they show up, and then it's too late. And then by that time, you're like, wow, so they're the conquerors and we're the slaves. Now you're fighting for your life. That's how they do it. Okay. So they're using fear tactics on people, both in the spiritual and not, in the mental and in the physical, to close your mind off, to keep you afraid of aliens of any kind, because anybody who reaches out to you that's trying to tell you good information, the first thing people say is, and I've run into this over the years, literally the girls over in the Czech Republic, when they were coming out, and I didn't know them back in the 80s, but I knew them in the mid 2000s, right? Starting at about 2016 or 2015, 2014, 15, somewhere around there. And literally when I was talking to people that are ex-military or CIA or current, they were like, that's the CIA they're talking to. The CIA is lying to them, and they're probably not transmuting anybody from anywhere. And then if you're not part of that religion, to where you think it's the deep state, then you're part of the religions. Then you go, it's the devil and demons that are brainwashing you. right? Either way, it's fear of the unknown or expansion of consciousness, either in the political and the physical. It's the bad guy, evil empire behind that is lying to you the whole time, or it's the other evil that's the devil and demons that are trying to possess your soul. So don't do that stuff. It's bad for you. They're all controlled and using fear tactics to keep you from expansion of your consciousness. You can't know about any of that stuff because it's either the deep state and the bad guys, just like with the time dilation in reality. Do you know how many people, the second I say that there was a shift and reality had changed, and they immediately go, CERN, the evil guys in the deep state, they're doing it. No, man, they're scared shitless. The fact that they're trying to explain it away, that's the same thing. But then they go, no, they're trying to explain it away because they're changing. There's a time dilation. Let me explain to you how time travel works. Okay. They're not trying to invent time travel because they understand what I know and what everybody knows when it comes to physics. Okay, let me explain this to you. Everyone always says, if you could go back in time and kill Adolf Hitler before he killed 12 million Jews, would you go back and kill him? And people go, oh, absolutely. I'll go back in time right now, and I'll go assassinate him when he's 5 years old. I'll kill his mom before she gives birth to him to stop that evil from happening. The problem with that is that he has to do what he did in order for you to go back in time and want to kill him. And if you go back in time and you shoot him and he dies in the past, you can't have existed in the future going through time to kill him in the past because you killed him in the past. Therefore, you in the future would never need to go back in the past to kill him. Do you understand that? It's called a causal loop. The only reason that Hitler is still alive is because nobody went back in the past to kill him, or no one would have ever heard of it because he wouldn't have existed. And then you don't know what that changes in the future. Because of Adolf Hitler, millions, 20, 30 million people around the earth died because of the Second World War and the encampments and the torture and killing of the Jews. If you go back and stop that from happening, let's assume that when you kill Hitler, you stop all of those events. That means that 22 million humans didn't die between 1938 and 1947 worldwide. How many of those people who were never invented, who never existed because they died in that time period, were going to be evil enough to come forward in time and to live for the next 75 years and be as evil or more evil than Adolf Hitler was? We don't know the ramifications of that. Ray Bradbury, I think it was Bradbury, wrote a book called, a short story called, I forgot what it was called. It was about the butterfly effect. And it was literally, the story was these people were going back in time and they were hunting dinosaurs, and they would go back and identify a dinosaur that was about to die, and they would bring people back into the past, and they were floating above the ground, walking on like a laser bridge, a floating bridge, and they would walk on that because they told you, do not touch anything and only shoot that dinosaur when we tell you to, so that it didn't change the course of time. And while they were doing all of that, one guy accidentally slipped off the edge of the path and stepped on the ground, and then got back up on the path and then went and shot the dinosaur. And when they went back in time in the elevator that went through time, when they got back, all of time had changed. Everything was completely different when they got back. Even the English language was completely different. And they realized that something had changed because they perceived it because they were in the past. And then when they said everybody to check themselves, the guy who stepped off the path, he checked, and on the bottom of his foot was a butterfly. He stepped on a butterfly 10,000 years ago and killed it, and it was on his boot. That butterfly and the butterfly effect coming forward for 10,000 years changed the entire course of the reality of the world. So immediately the guy who was his guide pulled a gun out and shot him in the fucking head and killed him. Because he had destroyed the earth compared to the way it was when they got back. It was so different. Okay. So literally you can't go back in time and kill Hitler because you don't know the ramifications of that. So scientists are not trying to go back in time to change time, because you don't know if you kill one person, the chain of events coming forward, that one extra person that died that wasn't supposed to, and what is going to be the cause of that in the future. The same goes when you know the history and you go back and you kill. This is why there's that television series called the Lazarus Project. Lazarus Project right now. It's an English series that I love on television. They're dealing with the exact same thing. And they showed you in there that one of the loops that they had reset time, they actually have the ability to go back to, I think it's July 2nd, somewhere in early July, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. I think it's July 2nd. Let's just say that it is for the and every year. So that's their break point, and that's a set point, an anchor point, July 2nd. So if you pass July 2nd and nothing has ended the universe or the planet Earth, they let it go. And if anything happens from July 2nd to July 2nd of the next year, and there's a catastrophe and the whole world blows up, they reset it to that July prior. And they are perceiving reality still, and they know that there's been a change in the loop. They perceive that loop and it starts over, and they go, something changed, something happened. And if they were in their office and they realized the world came to an end and that's why we reset it, they have the knowledge of that. And then they say, what caused us to die there? Let's try and stop that. And then they'll go and they keep trying it over and over. And if they fail 20 times, they reset the clock 20 times until they stop that cause from a nuclear destruction of the earth and kill whoever they have to kill. They showed this man and woman who were both working for the agency. The woman was pregnant and gave birth in that year, and then they reset the clock. And there was a time where they had to reset 22 times. And in that time of resetting 22 times before they solved the problem, they were going in a loop of resetting every time the world came to an end, going back to July 1st, where she didn't give birth yet. And then she went through giving birth, and she gave birth to 22 different children. Each time she was giving birth, it was a different child she gave birth to. So eventually, when they finished, they gave birth to a daughter who is now alive, but she was not in any other version of those 22 events, because the randomity of him ejaculating sperm into her to get her pregnant changed, and she ended up being pregnant with a different child 22 different times and had to go through losing the child to a new child every single time. Drove her and him absolutely insane. And it took them a long time to get over that. And they still haven't in the series. But they didn't tell anybody else. But you see it happening, and they talk about it to each other and a couple other people. But you see it. Okay? So they are aware, and the writers were aware of that loop and that cycle and how small things, and they discussed that. Two of the people got together during the same time period of the loops, and she's now been hit with a serum, so she remembers everything. And they got into an argument about, would we have actually been together? How many times were we both at that party and never met each other before we actually got together? Right? And so they have the memories of that, And so then they were going back in time, and it got really crazy because then they were trying to prove each one was, they were back in time, and now they went back in time. So now they're there with their own selves. So they're hiding from their own selves back in time, and they're meeting them before they met them to see if there was a connection. And each one was doing that. And then they ran into each other and realized they were both doing it. And they started laughing that they were both doing that. But so that entire thing, when it comes to time, is not CERN. I know that was a long story to get to that. They're not CERN. Okay? They're not trying to figure out time because they know the same thing. If you go back in time and you change one thing, the butterfly effect and chaos theory can unravel everything. By killing Adolf Hitler, you don't know the ramifications of what would happen coming forward in the future, going far enough. So depending on where you are, how far out in the future, if you're able to know at the time, kill Hitler before this happens, people tried. Okay? The fact they didn't do it, there might be other realities where they stopped Hitler. But this one is not one of them. So there's other realities out there, I'm sure, that are offshoots that you could move into, but you have to, at that point, be aware of where you are here and then shift into a different reality where Hitler never existed. That's why they call that the Mandela effect, because some people remember Nelson Mandela as dead, and he wasn't. And he survived, and he was in prison. Out and became the reality. Some people remember a reality where he died. Some of us remember Stephen Biko dying and Nelson Mandela living. Okay. So you have to realize that there are many different realities, and sometimes you jump from these other realities, but it's not CERN. It's not bad guys doing it. They're scared to death and they can't explain it. Okay. So you have to realize that when it comes to the causality, when it comes to this reality, that's part of the law of free will. To change something has ramifications, and that's why that you can't do it. Okay, that's part of the laws of the universe that Ra's talking about. So people would love to think, but then, okay, well then how come there is shifts? Let's get on to that, okay? How come there are shifts and people have memories of things that have changed, okay? Because there is limited ways to change that. I've explained this before. When the vampire knocks at the door and you let the vampire in, the vampire can then abuse you and bite you and suck your blood, okay? So the modus operandi is for them to come here and get boots on the ground. If you come from outside of this plane of existence and you come to this plane of existence, you have to have all the laws of this existence. So if I show up here and I'm 56 years of age, I either have to come into a body and become a walk-in, or I have to be born, or I have to be accepted to come down in a spaceship and come down here. But then I have to have a past and a future from the moment I get here. Do you understand that? So if I get here in the astral and lower my vibration, I have access to the past. These are the laws that are outside of this reality that you're unaware of. So that's why it's not unheard of that somebody who is in service to self becomes a wanderer, because it's necessary for an assassin to come down here in that same respect of me coming here legally. Because when I got here, I was all of a sudden in the past. It's accepted if somebody has come down and has changed something to usurp the freedom of choice, for somebody to then come down and fix it. If they went against the laws of nature that are accepted in a way that most people are unaware of. Why? So this ecosystem works the way it does. So this is the creator of the universe's sense of humor in allowing some time travel and time dilation and distortion. Because you are supposed to expand your consciousness away from just the physicality to the density, to a place where the spirit, your soul, resides, where you actually reside outside of this place. So in order for that to become apparent to you in any way, there has to be a temporal war. So the war is not just in the physical, it has to be temporal. has to be temporal. That means it has to be in the past, the present, and the future, and also in the different dimensions, the higher planes and the lower planes. Can't just be a physical temporal war, past, present, and future. But if you're all linear in the physical, that's all you will believe in. And you'll actually believe in a time where there's a war going on in the past, the present, and the future. But you won't fathom the possibility that the same soul that is occupying this body is occupying a different one in the past and a different one in the future and one here. And that somewhere along the line, that soul is consciously aware of all of those at the same time. You won't even have an idea and don't want to know about that, because you're locked into this physicality in a linear way. This is the reality is this. It's all there is. All the rest of that shit's just made up in your mind because you're crazy. Or you're religious, and that means you have a demon or the devil talking in your ear. Because you believe in invisible little men before you'll believe in little green ones that fly a spaceship. Do you see? So you either are physical and you don't believe in God or religion, then you'll believe in aliens and a spaceship. Or you're religious and you don't believe in aliens and a spaceship, but you'll believe in demons doing all the things that people say aliens are doing. Do you see? So those are the two religions that are physical. And they believe in the same thing happening, they just call it something different. One says bad guy aliens from another planet, and the other one says bad guy aliens from a spiritual plane. Right? A demon, the devil, an invisible character that resides outside of this physical. And that's as far as you'll go with either one. You won't accept that they're both the same. That's the separation of church and state. That's what they want. So they want you to believe that religion is a religion and their religion is the state. That's just reality. And the religion over here is fake and made up. But they believe in the same thing. They just call it something different. They believe that there are evil people doing evil shit to the people here from somewhere else, outside of this physical plane. From another physical plane over there, or they're from a place that's called hell. So one is spiritual and you can't see it, and the other one is in a spaceship and you can't see it. And then they'll take credit for everything. So they'll say there is no such thing as time travel. You guys are crazy who perceive that. Why do they tell you that? Because, well, they're covering up the fact that they're changing history. If they were, they would be solidifying more and more power, not losing it. Do you understand that? They wouldn't be changing things in the past that are only changing shit like Nelson Mandela died or didn't die. The Bernstein Bears were called the Bernstein Bears. Chick-fil-A used to be spelled C-H-I-C-K. Filet. Okay? Or C-H-I-C. Filet. Okay? Smokey Bear, Smokey Ranger wasn't called Smokey the Bear. Okay? Why are those things so inconsequentially changing? If they were going back in time, it would be something bigger. Stepping on a butterfly 10,000 years ago changes the entire planet so drastically that you don't recognize it very much when you come back. Yet we're supposed to believe that CERN and all the stuff they're doing is changing things so subtly, and they have no control over it, that they're going back in time. And what are they changing? Because they're not getting richer and they're not in and have more control, because that's what they would be about, because that is what they're about. So you have to look at, objectively look at what would be their motivation to have time travel. Their motivation for time travel would be to solidify their control, power, and money. They have that now, so why would they be wanting to change anything in the past? Well, maybe they already did it. Okay, they did. They did. And that's why some of us are actually here to fix it, because they did do that. So they're not currently changing the past now, but they're aware that there is a war that's going across time. How is that possible? Well, that means there's another faction. Do you understand that? There's another faction who's fighting against what they have done. So the changes that are currently rippling through time are never changes that are making it worse here. They're changes that are making it better here. Sometimes things change in a way that we don't expect either. Like, for instance, I told you 2 weeks ago, I went to Walmart that I've been going to for 7 years. And I drove up and realized an entire row of trees disappeared out of the parking lot. And it wasn't because they cut them down, because I went and observed that. I used to work in landscaping. I went and looked. The landscaping hadn't been tampered with. I was there on a Monday and came back on a Thursday. Had they gone and cut the trees down, they would have had to have grind the stumps or pull them out, and all the dirt would have been recompacted. And there would have been signs that that earth was changed and moved recently. And the dirt was impacted and had been sitting there forever. So there was never a row of trees there. But I used to park next to one of the trees. And it was no longer there. Oh, you just had the coincidence. You had the memory of it from something else. That's the Mandela effect that they want you to believe. Is that I remembered that wrong. That works if no one else remembers that. Doesn't work if a bunch of people on the planet, when you say, wasn't Chick-fil-A yesterday spelled C-H-I-C filet? And now it's C-H-I-C-K filet? It was chick, like a little chick. And they used a little chick, a little bird as their emblem. Chick-fil-A. The little bird disappeared and they spelled it C-H-I-C-K. Why? And then you look it up and they're like, no, we didn't change that. Why is it there are millions of people around the United States who have that memory? Because it used to be that way and now it's not. But the corporation says they never changed it. You're remembering it wrong. How is it that 1 million plus people have that same memory? And it all changed for all of them at the exact same time in their memory. Mandela effect. You guys, that's just some weird thing. It's an anomaly they don't understand. And scientists are like, it's just mass hysteria. You guys just, so literally, spontaneously, 1 million separate people around the entire country of the United States all got the same delusion overnight. Something happened to all of them wherever it is that they live. None of them are all living in the same town. Some of them around the world. And the reality changed and they all have the same memory. But because the majority of the people don't remember it that way, those few must be wrong. Get over it. That's what they tell you. You're wrong. We call that the Mandela effect because one of the big ones was Nelson Mandela, alive or dead. Okay. So they call it that. That's all they have. Coincidence. How is it that a bunch of people remember that then? They have a memory of it that way and then realized it when someone pointed it out. And they go, wait, that's not right. Or someone went, wait, that's not right. When did that happen? And other people were like, it's always been that way. And then more and more people said, no, it wasn't. So it's not the evil bad guys changing Chick-fil-A. It's not the evil bad guys changing the Bernstein bear from the Bernstein bear. That's a side effect of something that has changed. And that is something that only specific people notice. And here's the thing. All the people who notice the Mandela effect are never in service to self. They are only people who are in service to others, but not all of them. And of the people who remember these Mandela effects, 100% of them are in service to self, and 100% of them are spiritually awake or awakening And I will tell you that 100% of them are all wanderers. Okay? Know that. I am telling you that. So when something changes, if I find something that's small, I'll mention it. But if it's something like, unless another person that I know went to Walmart with me, that's something that's personal to me. But there was a shift 2 weeks ago. And that means there's going to be other things. And eventually someone, if they haven't already, because I haven't talked to anybody around the world about that, because I've been too busy worrying about what's going on with politics right now and working on that behind the scenes and getting my book published, right? So I know that there's a shift, a definite shift, and I know that there's smaller ones that ripple through. Because I've talked about it with, like, say, Stephanie, who's not going to be here today because she said she come on, it's the July 5th. She's probably partying with somebody somewhere. She's got other obligations. She said they can't be there, guys. It's okay. Nobody's required to be here. But her and I have had conversations about that, and Cassie and I have had conversations about that, to where I will see something spelled wrong, and I defer, and I talked about this, and I think, Penny, you brought that up as well, that I've noticed that I defer in my brain when something changes to a Viking spelling, right? And I know that I was there when I'm learning that now, but the Viking spelling currently of these languages over in Europe are not spelled that way. I all of a sudden will catch a hard C where we now have the line behind it to make it the K sound, a K. Before it was a K with that line behind it to be the hard, that was added. It's an English thing. It was added to the C because the C, people like the word Kelto. That was a Greek word. They also didn't have the K. So the K was added like the W was added. They were added to language to differentiate the soft C from the hard C. Put the line behind it, and that's what we call a K. That's why, because K instead of S. Cat. We still spell cat with the hard C with the shape of a C. That comes from the Old Norse. It should be spelled with a K, but we don't do that. German does. Right? A lot of the European languages use the hard K for words that we here in English currently use as a hard C with the K sound. Right? And that drives me crazy when I'm learning to spell other languages, because sometimes I have to use the K, which is a modern language that isn't from the old languages, because we still have residuals in modern English from the old Norse languages. So I've done that to where I've seen a word and gone, that's not supposed to be spelled with a K. It's supposed to be spelled with a C at the end. We still have words that are spelled with a C at the end that have the hard K sound in English. So we sometimes use the K for the hard K and sometimes use the C for the hard K at the beginning or at the end of the word. So we're all screwed up with modern English. And so it's literally a mishmash between ancient Futhark and modern Latin. Right? And that screws us up but it's easier if you learn English first. It's easier to learn all other languages because English is the most difficult language to understand and to spell. Okay, so you have to realize that there is a temporal war, and that means there's two factions, good and evil, those in service to self and those in service to others. So these things that are changing that they call the Mandela effect, it's not CERN messing around the deep state anywhere around the world. They already did their deed. They're trying to understand what's happening. And nobody was explaining it to anybody because we didn't have this mass communication. Some of us would just perceive the changes in the matrix and then never say anything about it. Sometimes I do that now. I was literally in my sleep twice in the last month, and things shifted in our reality enough to wake me in the dream to the shift for me to realize it's not a dream. Reality just shifted. I watched all of my memories go click, 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 and change while I was in my dream. But it wasn't part of the dream that was happening. This is the shaman training that I have when you become aware of a dream but still stay in the dream state. I was like something just changed, and I was aware in the dream, and the dream was still going on, and I was perceiving my memory outside of the dream being the witnesser now, but being able to stay in the dream state, and I was realizing that that literally a lot of things changed. And I woke up and went, wow, that's crazy that just happened while I was asleep and I was aware of it. Not crazy because I've had the training, but normally it happens while I'm awake. It's kind of rare that it happens to me while I'm asleep, and I become aware of it while it's happening while I'm asleep. So that was a different experience. And that actually happened to me 2 times. So I made a mental note. Was that part of the dream, or did something just shift? Well, the next day I went down to Walmart and went, wow, there's trees missing. There's like 10 trees gone that have never been here, that were here the entire time I've been coming to this store. All the other ones at the other end of the row are all still there. But these are all gone, and all the sprinklers that were watering them were also gone. And there wasn't a change in the dirt. They had plants there and small trickle sprinklers, but the place where the trees were was no longer had a tree stump or a tree or any sign that the ground had been shifted in any way to get a tree out of there. And I was just there a couple days prior. I was there on a Monday and came back on a Thursday. So had they done that, even if they used compactors, and I've used those, tampers, where you're holding onto it, it's going, it's a plate, and the plate is doing that. You've seen them on the sides of the roads, right? So even if they used one of those, I can tell the difference because I've done it. I did it for 10 years. I was in construction and maintenance. Okay, so I'm going to get off here because it's getting later. It's 5:30. I'm not going to stay on here for 4,500 hours. I'm going to get off here. So I think my mother needs to get up and go to the bathroom. If not, she has to take a shower. So I need to get that out of the way. I'm going to relax, watch some TV, get some dinner on time without talking forever. So we'll pick up where we are here. We didn't get too far in the Law of One this time, but we're talking about that information and what's going on with the temporal war. And you guys need to become aware of that. Know that if you think that it's just the bad guys doing things. No one ever thinks that good guys are actually having the same effect on things. Everyone always goes to doom and gloom because that's what they're preaching to you is fear, doom, and gloom. Okay. So it must be the bad guys. It's out of my control. It's evil people doing evil shit. And that's why they do it. Fear of them and their control. That's what they preach to you. That's what they put on you. But what would they be changing? It would be so drastic that it would change Chick-fil-A's spelling only. No, that's the shift that we're making that's changing things slower and slower. All right, I got to go because my mom's trying to get up. I love you guys. I'll see you guys next week.